If this story interested you, don't forget to subscribe to our channel and tell us which city you're watching us from. We continue. The Alden Beaumont mansion stood imposingly atop a wooded hill in Richmond Hill, one of London's most exclusive neighbourhoods. Seen from afar, the property looked straight out of an architecture magazine, with its 3 floors of light-coloured facade, wide floor-to-ceiling glass windows, and an impeccably manicured garden spanning almost 2,000 square metres. Ancient oak trees lined the cobblestone path leading to the main entrance, and a Kumaru wood deck wrapped around the heated swimming pool that was rarely used. During the day, sunlight flooded every room, reflecting off the Italian travertine marble floors and the walls adorned with carefully selected contemporary artworks accumulated over the years. Paintings by Vivian Sinclair shared space with discreet sculptures by local artists, creating an ambiance that blended sophistication and good taste. But at night, when the lights went out and silence took over, that same house transformed into something completely different. The long corridors seemed to stretch infinitely, shadows danced on the walls, and every sound, no matter how small, echoed in an amplified way, creating a suffocating sense of emptiness. Marcus Alden Beaumont was 43 years old and had a fortune built in the financial market that exceeded £100 million. The son of a respected doctor and a literature professor, he had chosen a different path from his family, delving into the world of investments while still at university. His investments in real estate funds, technology company stocks, and the stock market had yielded millions over 2 decades of tireless, methodical, almost obsessive work. He was recognized in business circles as a man of privileged vision, calculating without being cold in business, capable of predicting market trends with an almost supernatural precision that impressed even the most seasoned analysts. His decisions moved millions of pounds, his advice was sought after by investors nationwide, and his name frequently appeared in the economic columns of major newspapers, always associated with successful operations and intelligent strategies. Marcus had built his empire alone, brick by brick, negotiation by negotiation, always relying on numbers, data, statistics. The world of numbers was predictable, logical, safe. Emotions, on the other hand, were unknown and threatening territory. However, all this admirable professional competence brutally contrasted with his inability to deal with something much simpler and, at the same time, infinitely more complex and frightening: his own feelings. Since Olivia, his wife, had left so suddenly 2 years prior, Marcus had built emotional walls around himself, invisible bricks that piled up each day, creating an impenetrable fortress. The woman he loved, the mother of his son, the only person who could make him truly smile, who made him forget charts and reports to dance in the kitchen while they prepared dinner together, simply wasn't there anymore. Olivia had been a painter, a dreamer, a woman of easy laughter and long hugs. She balanced Marcus's rationality with her artistic sensibility, and together they formed a pair that worked in an almost improbable way. She was only 37 when an unexpected health complication, a congenital heart problem that no one knew existed, manifested aggressively and took her in a matter of weeks, from the devastating diagnosis to the final silence. Marcus couldn't talk about it. He couldn't even think about those last days without feeling a pressure in his chest that left him breathless, as if his own body rejected the memory. He tried once, right after the funeral, when the company therapist suggested he seek professional help. Marcus scheduled 3 sessions and cancelled all 3. He couldn't sit in that office and put into words the dimension of his loss. So he did what he knew best. He ignored it. He locked his emotions somewhere deep in his mind, built mental drawers with double locks, delved even deeper into work, spreadsheets, investments, and pretended everything was under control. Working 16 hours a day was easier than facing 2 minutes of silence with his own emotions. But it wasn't. Little Lucas, who had just turned 7 at a modest party he himself asked to be cancelled, was living. Proof that nothing was well in that house. The boy who used to run through the mansion's corridors laughing loudly, who invented wild stories with his superhero action figures scattered across the living room floor, who asked to help his mother in the kitchen, even without knowing how to do anything but make a mess and lick cake batter spoons, who drew with crayons on his bedroom walls with Olivia's amused permission, had completely disappeared. In his place, a silent, withdrawn child remained, with restrained movements and downcast eyes, who walked close to the walls as if trying to occupy the smallest possible space in the world, as if his existence were an inconvenience that needed to be minimized. Lucas had stopped playing, stopped smiling, stopped asking questions, stopped asking for hugs, stopped running. His brown eyes, so similar to his mother's, with that same golden sparkle when the light hit at a certain angle, now carried a sadness too old, too deep, too heavy for such a small child. It was as if someone had stolen his childhood and left only a fragile shell in its place, about to break at any moment. Marcus knew something was wrong. I knew, but he couldn't face it. It was easier to attribute everything to a difficult phase, to the natural grief of a child who had lost his mother, to school stress. Any rational explanation served, as long as it absolved him of the responsibility of looking inward, of truly talking to his son, of admitting that perhaps he himself was part of the problem. After all, Marcus Alden Beaumont didn't know how to deal with vulnerability. He never had. And now, when his son needed him most, all he could offer was distance. The routine in the mansion was silent, mechanical, predictable, like a Swiss watch. Marcus woke up early, around 6 in the morning, even on weekends, a habit he maintained since college. He wore a dark silk robe, descended the marble staircase in silence, his footsteps muffled by the Persian rug covering the steps, and went straight to the gourmet kitchen. There he had a quick, strong coffee, prepared by the automatic Italian coffee machine Olivia had insisted on buying years ago, accompanied by a slice of wholemeal bread with diet jam. Mrs. Celia, the housekeeper who had worked in the house for over 15 years and knew every corner of that property, every habit of that family, usually arrived around 7, bringing fresh, crusty rolls from the neighborhood bakery and organizing the house for another day. She was a woman in her 50s, grey hair tied in a low bun, hands calloused from years of work, but with kind eyes and a gentle voice. She had witnessed the happy days and now watched, helpless, the grief that stretched endlessly. After coffee, Marcus locked himself in the first-floor office, a large room with hardwood bookshelves filled with books on economics and finance that he barely had time to read, a huge executive desk with 3 monitors simultaneously displaying stock charts, and a leather armchair so comfortable that he sometimes fell asleep there during the early hours. Video conferences, quarterly reports, investment performance charts, risk analyses. All this consumed his mornings and afternoons without any significant pause. Lucas woke up later, had breakfast alone or with Mrs. Celia, went to the private school he attended, and returned in the mid-afternoon. The boy did his homework at the kitchen table, accompanied only by the housekeeper, who tried to strike up conversations but rarely received more than monosyllables in response. At night, father and son dined together in the immense dining room, sitting at opposite ends of a rosewood table that seated 12. Marcus asked about school. Lucas replied that everything was fine. Marcus commented something about work. Lucas nodded. Silence filled the rest of the meal. Afterwards, each went up to their room. Marcus returned to the office until late. Lucas lay in bed and stared at the ceiling, sometimes drawing infinite spirals in an old notebook he kept under his pillow. Mrs. Celia observed it all with growing sadness. She had witnessed happy days in that house. She remembered Olivia filling the rooms with fresh flowers, Lucas running barefoot through the garden, Marcus coming home from work and being greeted with warm hugs. But those days seemed to belong to another life, another house, another parallel universe where people still knew how to smile. What worried Mrs. Celia most was Lucas's behavior regarding the mansion's second floor. The boy avoided that corridor as if it were cursed ground. Whenever he needed to go up to fetch something from one of the guest rooms or the old studio where Olivia used to paint, Lucas would stop at the top of the stairs, take several deep breaths, and then run as fast as possible to his destination, always clinging to the wall opposite the main corridor. If a door slammed due to the wind, the boy would freeze, turn pale, drop whatever he was holding. The panic was immediate, visceral, as if that simple sound triggered something very deep and painful in his memory. Marcus had noticed his son's fear, but interpreted it as fear of ghosts or something childish of that sort. Once during dinner, he tried to address the subject superficially. "Lucas, you know there are no ghosts, right? The house is just a house." The boy didn't answer, just looked at his plate and continued poking at his food without eating. Marcus sighed, got up from the table, and returned to the office. Easier than insisting. The truth was that Marcus also avoided the second floor, especially the master bedroom where he and Olivia had slept for years. That space remained untouched since her departure. Her clothes were still in the closet, her books on the bedside table, her perfume on the dressing table. Marcus had had the door locked right after the funeral and had never returned. There. He preferred to sleep in one of the guest rooms on the third floor, away from memories that hurt too much to be confronted. It was Mrs. Celia who suggested, delicately, and fearing to be misunderstood, that perhaps it was time to hire someone to specifically care for Lucas. "The boy needs company, Dr. Beaumont. He spends all day alone when he's not at school. He needs someone to play with him, to talk to help with homework." "You do a wonderful job, Mrs. Celia," Marcus replied, without taking his eyes off the computer screen. "But you take care of the whole house. It's not fair to overload you." It wasn't about the housekeeper, of course. It was about Marcus not being able to admit that he didn't know how to care for his own son, that he couldn't be present, even when physically in the same house. Hiring a nanny was admitting a failure, but it was also a practical solution, and Marcus always preferred practical solutions to emotional confrontations. The recruitment agency he contacted was one of London's most renowned, specializing in professionals for high-net-worth families. Marcus made it clear what he needed: someone experienced, with impeccable references, discreet, who knew how to handle children in delicate situations. He didn't mention his son's trauma, nor his own difficulty in dealing with the situation. He just said he needed someone responsible and competent. 2 weeks later, the agency sent 3 resumes. Marcus discarded 2 without much thought. The third caught his attention not for the years of experience or the glowing references, but for something he couldn't explain. Maybe it was the photo. Or maybe it was just exhaustion speaking louder than reason. Anna Claire Miller, 28 years old, with a degree in education from the University of Cambridge, specializing in child development and educational psychology. She had worked for 3 families before, always with young children, and all letters of recommendation spoke of her patience, her sensitivity, and her ability to create genuine bonds. Marcus scheduled an interview for a Thursday afternoon. Anna Claire arrived promptly at 3 o'clock, driving a simple white Ford Fiesta that contrasted with the imported cars usually parked in that area. She rang the doorbell and waited, holding a black folder with documents. Mrs. Celia opened the door and led her to the living room, where Marcus was already waiting, sitting, in a leather armchair, flipping through her resume for the 3rd time. When Anna Claire entered, Marcus looked up and felt something strange. It wasn't attraction, it wasn't distrust, it was just an indefinable feeling that this woman had a different presence. She was of medium height, straight brown hair tied in a low ponytail, fair skin, clear green eyes that conveyed an almost disconcerting calm. She wore simple clothes, a white cotton blouse, dark jeans, and beige flats. No excessive makeup, no flashy jewelry. Everything about her seemed soft, discreet, like someone who didn't need to draw attention because she simply knew how to be present. "Good afternoon, Mr. Beaumont," she said, extending her hand firmly. "Pleased to meet you. I'm Anna Claire." "Good afternoon," Marcus replied, shaking her hand briefly before indicating the opposite armchair. "Please, have a seat." The interview lasted 40 minutes. Marcus asked the usual questions: previous experience, academic background, availability, salary expectations. Anna Claire answered calmly, without stammering, without appearing anxious. There was something therapeutic in the way she spoke, a gentle cadence that made even Marcus, always tense and rushed, feel minimally more relaxed. She said she had worked with a family in Chelsea caring for 4-year-old twins, then with a 6-year-old boy who had learning difficulties, and more recently with an autistic child who needed very specific routines. In each case, Anna Claire described not only the technical responsibilities, but the emotional connection she had built with each child. She spoke with genuine affection, like someone recalling important moments from her own journey. Marcus realized that she didn't see it just as work. She saw it as a vocation. When he mentioned, vaguely and impersonally, that Lucas had gone through a difficult family situation in recent years, without going into details about Olivia's loss, without mentioning the word he himself couldn't pronounce, Anna Claire just nodded, showing understanding without forcing confidences. "I understand perfectly, Mr. Beaumont. Children deal with loss in very particular and unique ways. Each has their own time, their own way of processing pain and absence. There is no ready-made recipe or instruction manual. The important thing is to truly be present, offer constant emotional security, and respect their pace, without pressure, without haste." Marcus remained silent for a few seconds, processing those words so simple and at the same time so profound. Respect their pace. Something he had never done, not even with himself when he tried to deal with grief, much less with the son who needed him. "Would you start on Monday?" Marcus asked, almost abruptly. Anna Claire smiled faintly. "Of course. What time would you prefer?" "From 8 in the morning until 7 in the evening, Monday to Friday. Weekends free unless there's an emergency." "Perfect. I'll be here." When Anna Claire left, Marcus stood in the living room for a few minutes, looking out the window. He couldn't explain why he had made the decision so quickly. Normally he analyzed everything calmly, asked for more time, rigorously checked references. But with Anna Claire, something inside him simply said it was right. And Marcus, although he didn't trust many things, still trusted his intuition when it came to people. Lucas was not told about the nanny's arrival. Marcus thought it best not to create expectations. On Monday morning, when the boy came down for breakfast, he found an unknown woman sitting at the kitchen table, talking softly with Mrs. Celia. Lucas stopped at the door, holding his school backpack with both hands, eyes wide. "Good morning, Lucas," Anna Claire said, without getting up, without making sudden movements. "I'm Anna Claire. I'll be here with you during the day, help with homework, play games, those kinds of things. Is that okay?" The boy didn't answer. He just stood there observing. There was no fear in his eyes, but neither was there enthusiasm. It was as if he was trying to decipher whether that presence represented a threat or a refuge. "Do you like crusty rolls with butter?" Anna Claire asked, pointing to the basket of fresh bread on the table. "I love them. Mrs. Celia made sure to buy them warm this morning." Lucas took a step forward, still hesitant. "I do," he mumbled. "Great. Come sit here then." The boy obeyed, but chose the farthest chair, almost at the other end of the table. Anna Claire didn't seem bothered. She just poured a glass of orange juice, cut a roll, buttered it, and placed it on his plate. Lucas ate slowly in silence, always keeping an eye on her. Anna Claire talked naturally with Mrs. Celia about simple things: the weather, traffic, a carrot cake recipe. She didn't force interaction with Lucas, didn't ask invasive questions, didn't try to break the ice artificially. She simply existed there as a calm and constant presence. In the first few days, Lucas kept his distance. He went to school in the morning, returned in the afternoon, did his homework at the kitchen table, while Anna Claire read a book or helped Mrs. Celia with small tasks. He observed the nanny discreetly, like someone studying a wild animal before approaching. Anna Claire, in turn, respected that space. She offered help only when necessary, never invaded the boy's emotional territory. She seemed to intuitively understand that trust is not won with insistence, but with patience. It was on the Wednesday of the first week that something changed. Lucas was drawing in his spiral notebook, while Anna Claire washed the snack dishes. Suddenly he asked, without taking his eyes off the paper, "Did you know my mum?" Anna Claire paused, turned off the tap, and dried her hands before answering. "No, dear, I didn't have that privilege, but Mrs. Celia told me she was very affectionate." Lucas continued drawing, but his shoulders relaxed slightly. "She was," he mumbled. "Very." Anna Claire went back to washing dishes, but something had changed in the air. A tiny door had opened. Marcus observed. Everything from afar, always from the office with the door ajar just enough to peek. or from some strategic corner of the house where he could see without being seen. He noticed every detail with an almost obsessive attention. He noticed how Lucas began to sit a little closer to Anna Claire with each passing day, gradually decreasing the physical distance that once seemed insurmountable. He noticed how the boy started asking for help with his math homework, showing his notebooks with a shyness that gradually gave way to confidence, something he never did before, preferring to make mistakes alone, rather than risk the shame of not knowing. He noticed how, little by little, small timid smiles began to appear on the child's face, first just a slight lift of the corner of his lips, then more open smiles, with his eyes sparkling, in a way Marcus hadn't seen since before Olivia left. And this, instead of leaving him relieved as he should have been, as any normal father would be to see his son finally coming out of the cocoon of sadness, began to bother him in a profound way that he couldn't name, couldn't rationalize, couldn't control. It was a visceral, primitive feeling, as if something precious was being torn from him, without him being able to do anything to stop it. Was it jealousy? Was it insecurity? Was it fear of being replaced? Marcus didn't know. He just felt a growing discomfort seeing his son form a bond with someone who had been in the house for less than 2 weeks, while he, the father, continued to be treated with the same polite distance as always. Anna Claire, in turn, continued her work without seeming to notice Marcus's growing tension. She established simple routines. Breakfast always at the same time, afternoon snack with fresh fruit, reading stories before bed. Lucas began to look forward to these routines. He began to feel safe within them. But the second-floor corridor remained an open wound. Lucas still avoided that space as if it were poison, and Anna Claire had noticed. One day, when they needed to get a book from Olivia's old studio, the boy froze at the top of the stairs, breathing too fast, his hands trembling. Anna Claire didn't rush him. She just stood beside him, breathing with him slowly. Breathe in through your nose, breathe out through your mouth. No rush, Lucas, no rush. It took 5 minutes until the boy could take the first step. Anna Claire walked beside him, respecting his pace without asking questions. That night, Marcus was in the office when he heard footsteps in the corridor. He peeked through the half-open door and saw Anna Claire leaving Lucas's room, closing the door carefully. He waited until she went downstairs and then entered his son's room. Lucas was lying down, still awake, staring at the ceiling. Marcus approached, hesitant. "Everything all right, son?" Lucas turned his head to the side, avoiding his father's gaze. "Yeah," he replied. Marcus stood there, still not knowing what to say. Then he mumbled a good night and left. At the door, he stopped and looked back. Lucas remained with his back turned, curled up under the blanket. Marcus felt something tighten in his chest, something that could be remorse or guilt, or just the painful realization that he didn't know how to talk to his own son. He closed the door slowly and returned to the office. But the discomfort didn't disappear with the passing days. On the contrary, it intensified. In the following days, Marcus began to pay more attention to small details that had previously gone unnoticed. Anna Claire used specific phrases with Lucas, always the same ones, repeated softly and constantly, calm, almost meditative phrases, laden with therapeutic intent. "Breathe deeply, Lucas. Let the air fill your whole chest. Feel it reaching your belly. Now release slowly, very slowly, as if you're emptying everything heavy inside you." Marcus had heard those exact words before, in another time, in another life. Olivia used exactly the same technique, with the same words, the same gentle intonation, to calm Lucas when he was younger and too agitated before bedtime, when the world seemed too big and too scary for such a small child. Olivia had learned that in a yoga and mindfulness course she had taken years ago, and had brought the practice into the home, transforming it into a ritual of connection with her son. How did Anna Claire know this? How did she know those specific words, that particular technique that wasn't common, that wasn't in pediatric manuals? Mrs. Celia could have mentioned something, of course, could have mentioned it in a casual conversation about the family's old habits, but it seemed too specific, too intimate, and that planted a seed of suspicion in Marcus's already fragile mind, a seed that began to grow rapidly, fed by fear and insecurity. And the more he observed the connection between the nanny and his son, the more that suspicion grew. There was no logic to it. Anna Claire had done nothing wrong. On the contrary, she was doing exactly what Marcus had hired her to do. But something inside him, something deep and irrational, began to interpret that closeness as a threat. At the end of the second week during dinner, Lucas did something unexpected. He looked at Marcus and asked, "Dad, can Anna have dinner with us?" Marcus looked up from his plate, surprised. "She's the nanny, Lucas. She has dinner in the kitchen with Mrs. Celia." "But she's nice, and the table is big," the boy insisted, with a timid courage Marcus hadn't seen in months. Marcus felt irritation rising, but controlled it. "Perhaps another day, son. Not today." Lucas lowered his head and resumed eating in silence. Marcus finished his meal without appetite, got up, and went straight to the office. But he couldn't concentrate. The image of his son asking for someone else, asking for someone who wasn't him, kept hammering in his head. That night, alone in the office, Marcus made a decision that would change everything. He opened his laptop, accessed a website specializing in home security systems, and ordered a complete kit of surveillance cameras. Small, discreet, high definition. He justified it to himself as a measure of protection. After all, he was responsible for a child and for people working in his house. He needed to know what was happening when he wasn't around. It was logical, rational, necessary. But deep down, Marcus knew it had nothing to do with security. It had to do with control, with fear, with the inability to trust someone who was slowly occupying a space in his son's life that should be his. The cameras arrived 3 days later. Marcus installed them personally on a Saturday morning, when Lucas was at his maternal grandparents' house and Mrs. Celia had taken the day off. He placed one in the living room, another in the dining room, a third in the kitchen, and the last in the second-floor corridor, right in front of that door Lucas feared so much. All connected to a mobile app, recording continuously, storing everything in the cloud. Marcus tested the system, checked every angle, every microphone, perfect. Now he would have answers. Now he would know what was really happening in that house when he was locked in the office. The following Monday, Anna Claire arrived as always, punctual, serene. Lucas greeted her with a genuine smile, something rare and precious. "Good morning, Anna," he said, and she replied with the same warm tone. "Good morning, champ. Shall we have breakfast?" Marcus watched the scene on his phone screen hidden in the office, and for the first time in a long time he didn't feel relief at seeing his son happy. He felt only a cold emptiness and a question he didn't want to answer. What exactly was he looking for in those recordings? The answer would come, but in a way he could never imagine. The weeks that followed brought subtle but undeniable changes to the routine of the Alden Beaumont mansion, slowly transforming the atmosphere that had previously seemed frozen in time. Anna Claire's presence had created a new dynamic, a kind of delicate balance that simply hadn't existed in that space laden with absences and heavy silences. It was as if someone had opened a window in a house closed for years, letting in fresh air and natural light. Lucas woke up more animated, descended the stairs with lighter steps, without that fearful hesitation that had marked his every movement in previous months, and for the first time in 2 long years, began to show small, still fragile but unmistakable signs that there was still a child beneath the thick layer of sadness that enveloped him like a coat, too heavy, too suffocating, too dark for his fragile, slumped shoulders. Mrs. Celia noticed these changes with a deep relief that made her pray every night in gratitude, whispering to Mr. Anthony during car rides that finally there seemed to be a ray of light entering that house so dark, so full of ghosts and memories that no one dared to face. But Marcus, locked in his office lined with dark wood and dusty books, observing everything through the surveillance cameras strategically installed in every corner of the house, could only feel a tightening in his chest that intensified each day, a constant pressure that made it difficult to even breathe properly. It was a cloudy Wednesday in June when Lucas did something completely unexpected. Anna Claire was in the living room, sitting on the Persian rug, organizing some children's books she had brought from home, stories with colorful illustrations that she believed might interest the boy. Lucas came down the stairs, stopped at the door and watched for a few minutes as he always did, assessing the situation before approaching. Anna-Claire looked up and smiled. "Hi, champ. Want to help me choose a book to read after our snack?" Lucas took a few hesitant steps into the room, his hands tucked into the pockets of his navy blue tracksuit bottoms. "Can I choose anyone?" he asked, his voice still weak but with a glimmer of genuine curiosity. "Anyone you want," Anna-Claire replied, making an open gesture with her hands. "I brought several. There's adventure, mystery, even one about astronauts. I remember Mrs. Celia told me you like stars." Lucas's eyes sparkled for an instant. "I do. Mum used to say I was going to be an astronaut." The boy said the word mum without trembling, without averting his gaze, as if for the first time in a long time he could mention Olivia, without a steel door slamming shut inside his chest. Anna-Claire maintained her serene expression, not dramatizing the moment. "She must have been right. You look like someone who's going to discover incredible things." Lucas moved closer, crouched beside Anna-Claire, and began to leaf through the books. There was an intimacy in that simple gesture that Marcus, watching from his phone screen hidden behind the office door, felt like a stab. His son, who barely looked at him during meals, who answered with monosyllables when asked about his day, was there, crouched beside a stranger, smiling in a way Marcus hadn't seen in years. Irritation came mixed with something deeper and more painful, the realization that he had failed. Failed as a father, failed as a protector, failed as the only person who should have been able to pull his son back to life. And now, a woman who had known Lucas for only a few weeks was managing to do what he hadn't been able to do in 2 years. How? How had she decoded that child so closed off, so hurt? Marcus wanted to believe there was some trick, some manipulation, something that justified that connection, because the alternative, the raw and simple truth, was unbearable. Perhaps he simply didn't know how to love his own son correctly. That afternoon, after Lucas returned from school with his usual school diary and some drawings he had made during art class in his backpack, Anna-Claire proposed something completely different from the established routine. "How about we make cookies?" she suggested, with that light, enthusiastic tone that made everything seem like a possible adventure, a fun expedition into unknown territory. Lucas, who was sitting at the kitchen table with his math notebook open to the page of multiplication exercises, looked up, with his calm brown eyes surprised and slightly suspicious. "Cookies, real cookies." "Really real," Anna-Claire confirmed, smiling. "We can make chocolate ones if you like, or vanilla, or half of each. You choose. Mrs. Celia has already set aside all the ingredients in the pantry. I asked her this morning when you went to school." Mrs. Celia, who was wiping the granite countertop with a damp cloth and organizing the spices that had been left out of place after lunch, smiled tenderly as she listened to the conversation. "Anna asked me first thing this morning. I thought it was a wonderful idea. It's been a long time since this kitchen saw homemade cookies being made, not since Mrs. Olivia—" The housekeeper cut herself off, realizing she had touched on a delicate subject, but Lucas didn't seem as bothered as before. The boy looked at his open notebook, then at Anna-Claire with her calm and welcoming green eyes, and then, in a gesture that seemed to cost enormous emotional effort, as if he were allowing himself to experience something pleasurable for the first time in a long time, he slowly closed his notebook and said, in an almost inaudible but firm voice, "Okay, I want to make chocolate ones. Let's do it." What followed was one of the lightest afternoons that kitchen had witnessed in years. Anna-Claire put an apron on Lucas, rolled up the sleeves of her own blouse, and began to teach him step by step. "First, we mix the butter with the sugar. You can stir with the wooden spoon, don't be afraid." Lucas stirred slowly, concentrated, as if performing an important mission. Anna-Claire added the ingredients, explaining each one, letting him truly participate, making him feel that he was part of the process and not just an observer. At one point, Lucas accidentally dropped flour on the countertop, creating a small white cloud that spread through the air. The boy froze, eyes wide, body tense, expecting a scolding, a reprimand, some negative reaction. But Anna-Claire just laughed, a genuine light-hearted laugh. Look, it snowed in the kitchen. Don't worry, Lucas. A good kitchen is a messy kitchen. She picked up some flour with her finger and made a streak on her own face, as if it were war paint. Lucas watched, disbelieving, and then shyly began to laugh too. A low laugh, almost inaudible at first, but which gained strength until it filled the entire kitchen with a sound that House hadn't heard for so long. It seemed to have been forgotten. Mrs. Celia, observing everything from a corner, felt her eyes well up. Marcus, watching through the camera installed above the refrigerator, felt his chest tighten even more. He wanted to turn off his phone. He wanted to stop seeing it, but he couldn't. It was like a compulsion. He needed to witness, he needed to confirm, repeatedly, that his son was happy without him. The cookies were ready after almost 2 hours of joint work. When they came out of the oven, filling the kitchen with a sweet, comforting smell of melted chocolate, Lucas grabbed one still warm and bit into it, burning his tongue a little, but not caring. "It's good," he exclaimed, with a childish excitement that Marcus had long believed to have disappeared forever. Anna Claire tasted it too and agreed. "It's delicious. You're a chef, you know." That night, during dinner, Lucas did something that surprised even Mrs. Celia. He brought a plate of cookies to the table and offered them to Marcus. "We made cookies today, Dad. Want to try?" Marcus looked at the plate, then at his son, and felt something stir within him, something akin to shame mixed with tenderness. "Of course, son. Thank you." He took a cookie, bit into it slowly, and forced a smile. "It's very tasty. Did you make it yourself?" Lucas shook his head. "Anna helped, but I stirred the dough." Marcus nodded, not knowing what else to say. Lucas resumed eating, seemingly satisfied, but Marcus barely managed to finish his own meal. That simple scene, a boy offering cookies to his father, something that should be natural and commonplace, seemed to carry an immense symbolic weight. It was as if Lucas was saying, "Look, Dad, I'm starting to live again, but not because of you." After dinner, Marcus went up to the office and opened the camera app again. He began reviewing the day's recordings, watching every interaction between Anna Claire and Lucas, in search of something, anything that would justify his growing paranoia. But all he saw was a woman caring for a child with patience, affection, and respect. No inappropriate words, no suspicious gestures, no obvious manipulation. And this, in some perverse way, only made the situation worse, because it meant there was no villain to blame, no external enemy to fight. The problem was within himself. The following weekend, Lucas asked for something that caught Marcus completely off guard. It was a Saturday morning, and Marcus was in the office reviewing reports when the boy timidly knocked on the door. "Dad?" Marcus looked up, surprised. Lucas never sought him out spontaneously. "What is it, son?" "Can I go to the park with Anna?" "She said only if you let me." Marcus felt a pang of irrational jealousy. "Which park?" "Richmond Park. Anna said there's a cool playground and that I need to get some sun." Marcus wanted to say no, wanted to invent any excuse, but he knew it would be cruel and unjustifiable. "You can go, but be back before lunch." Lucas smiled, a genuine smile that lit up his thin face. "Thanks, Dad," and ran off. 2 hours later, Marcus was at the office window when he saw Anna Claire and Lucas returning from outside. They walked side by side, Lucas holding an ice cream cone and animatedly telling something, gesturing with his free hand. Anna Claire listened attentively, laughing at the right moments, asking questions that kept the conversation flowing. It was such a normal, healthy scene, so similar to what a mother and son would do on any given Saturday, that Marcus had to pull away from the window before the lump in his throat turned into something more. That night, after Lucas went to sleep, Marcus stayed alone in the first-floor library, a room he rarely used, lined with books Olivia had collected over the years. He grabbed a bottle of whiskey, poured himself a generous measure, and sat in the leather armchair she adored. The lights were off only, the moonlight entering through the tall windows. Marcus drank slowly, letting the liquid burn his throat, trying to numb the thoughts that wouldn't stop circling. Olivia would be proud to see Lucas smiling again. She would be grateful to Anna Claire for being able to reach the boy in a way that he, Marcus, never could. But would Olivia also understand the fear he felt? Would she understand that seeing his son become attached to another person was like admitting that he had failed in the most important role of his life? Marcus took another sip, larger this time, and closed his eyes. He missed his wife in a way that never diminished, only changed form. In the beginning it was a sharp, searing pain that woke him in the middle of the night in a cold sweat. Now it was a constant melancholy, a weight he carried everywhere, like an invisible backpack full of stones. The following Monday, something happened that further intensified Marcus's obsessive vigilance. Lucas was doing homework at the kitchen table when he got stuck on a math problem. Anna Claire, who was nearby organizing some school supplies, approached. "Need help?" Lucas nodded, frustrated. "I can't understand this sum." Anna Claire pulled up a chair and sat beside him. "Let's see, read the problem to me." Lucas read with difficulty, an exercise on subtraction with larger numbers. Anna Claire listened carefully and then picked up some fruit from the fruit bowl. "Let's do this. Imagine you have 12 oranges and you're going to give 5 to your friend. How many are left?" Lucas counted on his fingers. 7. "That's right. Now let's write that down on paper the same way." Anna Claire guided his reasoning step by step, without giving the answer outright, just guiding him, until he reached the conclusion himself. When Lucas finally solved the problem, his eyes sparkled with pride. "I got it!" Anna Claire smiled and extended her hand for a high five. "Congratulations, mathematician. I knew you could do it." Lucas slapped her hand firmly, laughing. "Thanks, Anna, you explained better than the teacher." Marcus, watching through the camera, felt a mixture of admiration and envy. Anna Claire had infinite patience, a capacity to teach that seemed natural, almost instinctive. She saw Lucas not as a problem to be solved, but as a person with potential to be developed. And Lucas flourished under that attention. His school grades began to improve. Teachers now called with positive news. The boy was participating more in classes, interacting with classmates, making up for lost time. But there was something that still haunted Lucas, and that Anna Claire had identified with surgical precision: the second-floor corridor. That space remained an open wound, a place the boy avoided at all costs, always making excuses not to pass through there. Anna Claire didn't force, didn't pressure, but she observed. And one day, when Lucas was particularly relaxed after an afternoon of playing in the garden, she decided to approach the subject gently. They were sitting on the back veranda, in comfortable wicker chairs with floral cushions that Olivia had chosen years ago, drinking chilled passion fruit juice that Mrs. Celia had prepared that afternoon, and eating the chocolate cookies they had made together a few days earlier, that still remained in a glass jar in the kitchen. The afternoon sun filtered through the leaves of the sycamore tree that shaded that part of the house, creating patterns of light and shadow that danced on the wooden floor. Anna Claire allowed a few minutes of comfortable silence to settle between them, knowing that sometimes shared silence is more therapeutic than 1,000 rushed words, and then asked in a carefully casual tone, like someone commenting on the weather or the taste of the juice, "Lucas, can I ask you a question? If you don't want to answer, that's fine, no problem at all. We can change the subject and talk about anything else." The boy looked at her, his body becoming slightly tense, but there was enough trust there that he didn't close off completely. "You can," he said, holding the glass tighter. "That corridor on the second floor, near the room that's always locked with the dark wooden door. What is it about that place that makes you so scared? Why don't you like going through there?" Lucas remained silent for a long time, that seemed to stretch infinitely, his eyes fixed on the glass of juice, watching the small particles of pulp floating in the orange liquid. Anna Claire didn't rush him, didn't insist, didn't fill the silence with empty words. She just waited, breathing slowly, letting the boy arrive at the answer in his own time. Finally, after what seemed like minutes but was probably only seconds, Lucas mumbled, so softly that she almost couldn't hear him even though she was sitting right beside him. "It's where Mum used to cry. Sometimes really loud, sometimes just making that quiet little noise, you know? Like she was trying not to make noise but couldn't hold it in properly." Anna Claire felt her heart tighten in her chest, a deep, empathetic pain, but kept her face serene and welcoming without showing shock or exaggerated pity. "You remember her crying there?" she asked softly. Lucas nodded, still without lifting his eyes from the glass he held as if it were an anchor. She was very sad in those days. She would sit there alone on the floor, leaning against the wall. I saw through the crack in the door when she didn't close it properly. I didn't know how to help. I didn't know what to do to make her stop being sad. Anna Claire slowly extended her hand without touching, just offering. Lucas looked at her hand, hesitated, and then placed his own over hers. Small, warm, trembling. You were very small, Lucas. It wasn't your responsibility to help. Children don't have to take care of adults. Adults have to take care of children. The boy looked up, and there was a silent question there, a doubt he had carried for so long. But what if I had done something? What if I had been a better boy? Anna Claire gently squeezed his hand. That's not how it works, my dear. What happened to your mum wasn't your fault. Never was. Sometimes bad things happen and we can't stop them, no matter how much we want to. Lucas swallowed hard, fighting back the tears that threatened to fall. I miss her. I know you do. And you can. Feel it, it's part of it. Missing someone isn't bad, it's just hard. Lucas finally let the tears roll silently down his face. Anna Claire didn't try to dry them, didn't try to rush the process. She just stayed there, holding the boy's hand, letting him feel what he needed to feel. It was Mrs. Celia who found them like that minutes later, when she came to call them for dinner. The housekeeper stopped at the door, moved, and decided to come back later. But someone else had witnessed that scene. Marcus, through the camera installed on the veranda, watched everything. He saw his son open up in a way he had never done with him. He saw the tears Lucas hid so well finally find an outlet, and he saw Anna Claire offer exactly what the boy needed: non-judgmental presence, listening without correction, acceptance without haste. That night Marcus couldn't sleep. He tossed and turned in the guest bedroom bed, his thoughts racing, his heart heavy. Around 2 a.m, he gave up trying, got up, and went down to the kitchen for water. Passing through the corridor, he saw a light on under Lucas's bedroom door. He approached and listened. The boy was crying softly, a muffled sob against the pillow. Marcus stood there, hand on the doorknob, paralyzed. Should he go in? Should he offer comfort? But what would he say? How would he embrace a son he himself had pushed away for 2 years? Shame immobilized him. Then he heard footsteps. Anna Claire was coming up the stairs, wearing a simple robe, her hair loose. She saw him standing there and immediately understood the situation. With a gentle gesture, she indicated that he could stay, but Marcus shook his head and moved away, returning to his own room. Through the crack in the door, he watched Anna Claire enter Lucas's room. She didn't turn on the light. She just sat on the edge of the bed and began to do what Olivia used to do: guide the boy's breathing with a soft voice. Breathe deeply, Lucas. Let the air fill your whole chest. Now release slowly, very slowly, as if you're blowing out a candle from far away. Lucas obeyed, sobbing between breaths. Anna Claire continued, patient, repeating the cycle until the boy's breathing calmed and the crying ceased. You are safe, she murmured. It's okay to feel what you're feeling. I'm here. Marcus closed his own bedroom door and sat on the bed, his head in his hands. The scene he had just witnessed should have relieved him. It should have made him grateful to have someone so competent caring for his son. But all he felt was a toxic mixture of jealousy, inadequacy, and fear. Fear that Anna Claire was replacing not only the role he should be fulfilling, but also, in some incomprehensible way, the role Olivia had left vacant. And it was at that moment, in that lonely and dark early morning, that Marcus made a decision that would change everything. He needed to know more. He needed to understand who Anna Claire Miller really was, where she came from, what motivated her. He needed proof, answers, something concrete to explain that impossible connection she had created with Lucas. It wasn't rational, he knew, but rationality, his old companion in all business and life decisions, had been abandoned the moment he saw his son crying in someone else's arms. The next morning, shortly after Anna Claire arrived and took over Lucas's care for the day, taking the boy for breakfast before school, Marcus called a private investigator he had used years ago, early in his career, to vet key employees of his company and potential business partners before closing important contracts. The man was discreet, efficient, expensive, and never asked unnecessary questions about clients' motivations. The conversation was brief, direct, almost transactional, without circumlocutions or justifications. "I want you to investigate someone for me," Marcus said, his voice sounding cold and professional even as he felt a pang of guilt in his stomach. Everything. Full background, family history, current and past relationships, all previous jobs with cross-references, financial movements if possible. Everything you can find, no matter how insignificant it seems. He gave Anna Claire Miller's full name, the national insurance number that was in the employment contract documents filed in his employee folder, the address she had provided on the registration form, and hung up immediately afterward. He felt dirty doing it, as if he were betraying not only Anna Claire's trust, but also some invisible moral code he didn't even know he had. It was invasive, disloyal, a clear violation of the privacy of someone who had only shown absolute competence and genuine care for his son. But the fear, that irrational and primitive fear of losing control completely, of discovering that there was something sinister hidden behind that facade of goodness, was infinitely stronger than guilt or any notion of ethics. The investigator said it would take about a week. Marcus agreed and returned to his routine, but now with an additional weight on his shoulders. He continued observing through the cameras, continued recording every interaction, every word, every gesture. He looked for flaws, for contradictions, for anything that would reveal hidden intentions, but Anna Claire remained consistent, gentle, present. A week later, while Lucas was at school, the investigator sent a full report by email. Marcus locked himself in the office and opened the file with slightly trembling hands. He read every line with obsessive attention. Anna Claire Miller, 28 years old, born in Cambridge, Cambridgeshire. Simple family, father a mechanic, mother a housewife. Studied education with a full scholarship, graduated with honours, worked for 3 different families as already documented in her resume. No lawsuits, no financial arrears, no suspicious relationships. She was in every aspect exactly who she said she was, a dedicated professional and a decent person. Marcus closed the file, feeling foolish and relieved at the same time. There were no dark secrets, no Machiavellian plans. Anna Claire was simply a good person doing a good job, but that didn't alleviate the discomfort, because the problem was never Anna Claire. The problem had always been him. That afternoon, when Lucas returned from school excited because he had scored full marks on an English test, Marcus tried to connect. "That's great, son. Did you study hard?" Lucas nodded. "Anna helped me. She reads very well." Marcus forced a smile. "That's excellent. I'm happy for you." Lucas looked at his father as if assessing the sincerity of those words, and then just shrugged and went to the kitchen for his snack. Marcus was left alone in the living room, staring into the void. Every attempt at rapprochement seemed hollow, forced, too late. And perhaps it really was. Perhaps he had lost his son forever, not to Anna Claire, but to his own inability to be present when needed. But fate, or chance, or simply life, taking its unpredictable course, was about to offer Marcus one last chance. A rainy night, a crisis, and a recording that would reveal not Anna Claire's secrets but his own. And when the truth finally emerged, painful and inevitable, Marcus would have to decide if he was capable of facing his own reflection in the mirror, or if he would continue to flee until there was nowhere left to run. The rain began to fall on a Friday afternoon in July, fine and persistent at first, gradually turning into a storm that rattled the mansion's windows and made the sycamore tree branches beat against the glass with rhythmic and unsettling force. The London sky was heavy with dark clouds that seemed to weigh down on the entire city, and the cold wind from the south brought with it that penetrating humidity characteristic of the London winter. Lucas was quieter than usual that afternoon, as if he could feel the approach of something invisible, some change in the air that only children and animals can perceive before adults. He stayed in the living room with Anna Claire, drawing in silence while she read a book beside him, maintaining that quiet, constant presence that the boy had learned to value. Mrs. Celia prepared a light dinner, vegetable soup and Italian bread, perfect for a cold and rainy day. Lucas ate slowly, more interested in watching the storm through the dining room's panoramic window than in properly eating. Marcus dined with them, but as always, in silence, responding with monosyllables when his son tried to strike up a conversation about a drawing he had made at school. Anna Claire had already left, as she did every evening around 7, leaving Lucas in the care of his father and Mrs. Celia. After dinner, Marcus helped Lucas brush his teeth, a rare moment of physical interaction between father and son that happened mechanically, without real affectionate exchanges. The boy put on his blue flannel pajamas, with space rocket prints, said goodbye to Mrs. Celia, who was finishing organizing the kitchen, and went to his room. Marcus accompanied him to the door, murmured, "Good night, son, sleep well," and returned to the office, where he had pending reports to review before the following week. Around 9 in the evening, the storm intensified dramatically. Lightning illuminated the sky in white and bluish flashes that momentarily turned night into day, followed by thunder that made the solid structure of the mansion vibrate in its foundations. The wind howled through the garden trees like a wounded creature, tearing off leaves and smaller branches, scattering them across the soaked lawn. Mrs. Celia, who slept in a small room on the ground floor near the laundry room, woke with a start from a particularly strong clap of thunder that seemed to split the sky in half. She got up, put on her thick cotton robe, and decided to check on Lucas, knowing that the boy had always been afraid of storms since he was very young. As she climbed the stairs to the second floor, treading softly on the marble steps to avoid making noise, Mrs. Celia noticed that Lucas's bedroom door was ajar and the light was completely off. She approached slowly and peeked through the crack. The bed was empty, the blanket tossed aside haphazardly, as if someone had left in a hurry or in a state of confusion. The housekeeper's heart tightened in her chest. "Lucas," she called in a low voice, entering the room and turning on the spaceship nightlight that illuminated the bedside table. Nothing. The private bathroom was also empty, the tap dripping slightly. Beginning to worry seriously, feeling fear rise in her throat, Mrs. Celia went out into the dark corridor, and that's when she saw the scene that made her freeze. At the end of the second-floor corridor, the same corridor Lucas avoided at all costs for as long as he could remember, a small silhouette stood in front of the door to the old master bedroom, the one Marcus had locked 2 years ago and had never opened again. Lucas was barefoot, wearing only the flannel pajamas that seemed too big for his thin body, his body completely still, rigid as a marble statue. Mrs. Celia approached slowly, her heart beating fast without making a sound, and realized with a shock that the boy's eyes were glazed over, completely open but not really seeing what was in front of him. He was sleepwalking. "Lucas, dear," Mrs. Celia murmured softly, but dared not touch him. She had read somewhere, perhaps in a health magazine, that one should not wake sleepwalkers abruptly because it can cause serious problems. The boy did not react to her words. He just slowly extended his hand, with mechanical and precise movements, and touched the cold doorknob of the locked door. His lips then moved, whispering words that the housekeeper could barely hear above the sound of the storm outside. "Mum," he murmured, his child's voice laden with such deep sadness that it broke her heart. "Mum, don't cry. I'm here with you. Please, don't cry anymore. I'll be a good boy. I promise." Mrs. Celia felt tears well up instantly, hot and uncontrollable. She was about to call Marcus, already turning to run down the stairs, when a tremendous clap of thunder exploded outside, so close and so violent that it seemed to have struck exactly there in the front garden. The entire mansion trembled, the lights flickered once, twice, 3 times before returning, and Lucas, still sleepwalking, jumped back, startled by the sudden noise. It was at that moment that his eyes truly widened, blinking rapidly, waking abruptly, and completely disoriented. He looked around with growing confusion, not understanding where he was, how he had gotten there, why he was barefoot in the cold corridor. When he finally realized he was in the corridor, he feared so much, in front of that specific door that held so many painful memories, panic overwhelmed his small body. Lucas's breathing instantly accelerated, becoming short, shallow, desperate. The boy's chest rose and fell too fast, like a frightened bird, his cume. Eyes wide with pure terror, his hands beginning to tremble violently along his body. It was a full-blown, classic and devastating panic attack. Mrs. Celia tried to approach with outstretched hands, tried to reach him, but Lucas instinctively recoiled, leaning his back against the cold wall, slowly sliding down until he was crouched on the hardwood floorboards, his thin arms wrapped around his trembling legs, rocking back and forth in a repetitive, self-protective movement. "I can't breathe," he sobbed between failed attempts to draw air. "I can't, Mrs. Celia. It's all tight in here. It's all tight and I can't." "Make it stop." The housekeeper didn't know what to do, feeling completely helpless in the face of a situation beyond her practical knowledge. She tried to calm him, kneeling beside him, speaking soft words that had worked when Lucas was smaller. But nothing seemed to penetrate the panic that consumed him. It was then that she heard quick, decisive footsteps hurrying up the stairs. Anna Claire appeared in the corridor, still wearing the same clothes she had left in earlier, dark jeans and a green wool sweater. Her brown hair completely wet from the rain, drops running down her face, her soaked clothes clinging to her body. "I was on my way home when the storm got worse," she explained quickly, without taking her eyes off Lucas. "I saw the house lights flickering and something told me to come back, to check if everything was okay. I had a bad feeling." Anna Claire approached slowly, with controlled and non-threatening movements, crouching on the floor at a safe distance from Lucas, without invading the personal space the boy clearly needed in that moment of extreme vulnerability. "Lucas," she called with the softest voice possible, almost a whisper. "Lucas, love, look at me. Just look at me for a second, okay? You don't have to do anything else. Just look." The boy looked up, his eyes glazed, desperate, his small face wet with tears and sweat, his lips trembling. "I can't stop, Anna. I can't make it stop. Everything's bad." "I know you can't right now," she replied with absolute calm. "I know it's very difficult, but we'll get through it together, just like we have before. Do you trust me?" Lucas nodded weakly, his head shaking in small, trembling movements. Anna Claire slowly extended her right hand, keeping her palm open and visible. "You don't have to hold my hand if you don't want to. No one will force you to do anything, but if you want to, it's here waiting for you." Lucas hesitated, looking at the extended hand as if it were a lifeline in a stormy sea, then stretched out his own trembling hand and grasped her fingers with surprising strength for someone so small and scared. "Good. Very good," Anna Claire said, squeezing back with comforting firmness. "Now let's breathe together. Just like we've done other times. Don't try to breathe deeply yet, okay? That can make it worse. Just let out the air in your lungs. Let it all out. Blow as if you're blowing out a lot of birthday candles, a really big cake." Lucas obeyed with difficulty, blowing in short, irregular bursts. "That's it. Perfect. Very good. Now wait a little bit. Don't do anything, just wait. Let the air come in by itself, very slowly. Don't pull, don't force. Just let it happen naturally." Anna Claire repeated the process over and over, her calm and firm voice acting as an emotional anchor amidst the storm happening inside and outside the house. Gradually, minute by minute, with infinite patience, Lucas's breathing began to slow. The frantic rhythm began to decrease. The panic began to release its cruel grip. When he finally managed to breathe almost normally, with his chest rising and falling at a more natural pace, the boy collapsed into deep sobs, all the emotions repressed for years finally finding an outlet. Anna Claire gently pulled him into a protective hug, and Lucas clung to her desperately, as if she were the only solid thing in a world crumbling around him. What no one there knew was that Marcus had observed absolutely everything from the beginning. He was in the office reviewing investment spreadsheets when he heard the unusual noise upstairs, instinctively grabbed his phone and opened the security camera app. He saw Mrs. Celia finding Lucas in the corridor, saw the exact moment the boy woke from sleepwalking, saw the panic attack setting in brutally, saw Anna Claire arriving drenched and with a competence that seemed almost supernatural, doing exactly what was needed. No more, no less. Marcus watched everything with a racing heart, beating so hard he could hear it in his own ears, gripping his phone so tightly that his knuckles turned completely white and sore. He should have rushed upstairs. He should have been the one to comfort his son in crisis. He should have been the one to offer the hug, the security, the love. But he was paralyzed in his office chair, completely unable to move, trapped in his own emotional inadequacy. After Lucas finally calmed down, his small body still trembling slightly with the remnants of the crisis, Anna Claire helped him up gently. "Let's take you to your room, okay? You need to rest now. You were very brave." The boy nodded, completely exhausted, and allowed himself to be guided by his thin shoulders. Mrs. Celia followed silently, still visibly shaken by what she had witnessed, wiping her own tears with the back of her hand. Once in Lucas's room, Anna Claire helped him lie on the bed, adjusted the pillow, covered him with the soft astronaut blanket, and sat on the edge of the mattress. "Do you want me to stay here until you're truly asleep?" Lucas held her hand tightly, his small fingers intertwined with hers. "Stay, please, don't go yet." She nodded tenderly. "Of course I will. I won't leave here as long as you need me." Mrs. Celia murmured softly that she was going to prepare some chamomile tea to calm everyone's nerves, and discreetly left, closing the door carefully to avoid making noise. In the comforting silence of the room, with only the soft light of the nightlight creating a golden, warm circle of clarity that kept the shadows at bay, Lucas finally began to talk about things he had never said aloud before. "I remember her crying in that corridor," he murmured, his voice choked and weak. "She cried a lot, almost every day. I didn't understand why. I was too small." Anna Claire said absolutely nothing, didn't try to fill the silence with empty words, just continued to hold his hand firmly, letting the boy find his own words at his own pace, in his own time. "She asked my dad not to leave that day. It was on a weekday, I think a Wednesday or Thursday. She asked him to stay home with her, said she was feeling very unwell, very sad, that she needed company. But he said he had an important meeting, that he couldn't miss it no matter what, that he would lose a lot of money if he didn't go. She begged Anna, she was crying and begging on her knees, and he left anyway." Anna Claire felt her throat tighten with the pain of that revelation, but kept her face serene and welcoming. "And what happened next, Lucas? Do you remember?" The boy swallowed hard, fighting back the tears that were already streaming down his face. "She stayed there in the corridor, sitting on the floor, leaning against the wall, crying softly. I didn't know what to do. I was too small to help. I tried to hug her, but she just cried more. She said it wasn't my fault, that I hadn't done anything wrong, but I thought I had. I thought if I were a better boy she wouldn't be so sad. I thought it was my fault she left." Anna Claire finally spoke, her voice laden with contained emotion but firm. "Lucas, look at me. Look straight into my eyes." The boy obeyed, turning his wet face towards her. "What happened to your mum was not your fault. Never, ever was it your fault. You were a small child. Children are not responsible for adults' sadness. It wasn't your job to fix her pain. It was the adult's job to take care of her and you. Do you understand that?" Lucas nodded slowly, but his next words revealed the depth of the trauma. "I'm afraid of forgetting her. I'm afraid of forgetting her face, her voice. And I'm also afraid of remembering. Because when I remember, it hurts too much. So I'm stuck, Anna. I can't really remember or forget. And that corridor is where everything hurts the most. It's where I feel her closest. But it's also where I feel I lost her forever." Anna Claire squeezed the boy's hand. "You won't forget your mum, Lucas. She will always be with you, in your heart, in your memories, in the good things she taught you. And one day, when you're ready, you'll be able to remember her without it hurting so much. You'll be able to be happy about the good things you shared together, but there's a right time for that, and you don't need to rush at all." The boy finally closed his eyes, exhausted from crying so much, from feeling so much, from carrying alone a weight that shouldn't be his. In the office, Marcus, the E, continued watching through the camera installed in Lucas's room, but nothing, absolutely nothing, could have prepared him for what he was about to hear. Lucas, almost asleep, mumbled one last thing, his voice so low that Anna Claire had to lean in to understand. My dad didn't come back that day. Mum waited and waited. She called him crying, asking him to come back. I heard from my bed, but he said he was busy. When he came back at night, she had already gone to the hospital. And she never came back. I think he never forgave himself for that. And I think he's angry at me for reminding him of it every day." The words hit Marcus like a devastating punch to the stomach, knocking all the air from his lungs. He dropped his phone, which fell to the office floor with a dull thud, and brought his hands to his face, finally allowing the tears he had suppressed for 2 whole years to fall. Lucas was right. He was completely right. That day, Olivia had called him in the middle of an important stock acquisition meeting, begging him to come home, saying she was feeling very unwell, very strange, very scared. And he, focused on the numbers, the charts, the possibility of profit, had said he would be back soon, that she just had to hold on a little longer. When he finally got home 7 hours later, he found Mrs. Celia desperate and Olivia already on her way to the hospital in an ambulance. She never came back from that hospital. For 2 years, Marcus had fled from this truth. He had buried the guilt so deep that he could almost pretend it didn't exist. But it was there. It always had been, and worse still, and he had projected all this guilt onto his innocent son, maintaining emotional distance, because looking at Lucas was looking at his own failure as a husband, as a partner, as a human being. The recording he believed would reveal Anna Claire's secrets had actually revealed his own. There was no manipulation by the nanny. There was no external danger. There was only a father who had failed when he was most needed, and who was now failing again by not being able to be present for the son who needed him most. Marcus got up from the chair, wiped his face with trembling hands, and left the office. He climbed the stairs slowly, each step seeming to weigh a ton. When he reached Lucas's bedroom door, he stopped, took a deep breath, and knocked softly. Anna Claire opened it, surprised to see him there. Lucas was already asleep, his breathing finally peaceful. "Can I come in?" Marcus asked, his voice hoarse. Anna Claire nodded and stepped aside, making space. Marcus approached the bed, looked at his sleeping son, and then, for the first time in 2 years, knelt beside the bed and held Lucas's small hand. "I'm sorry, son," he whispered, tears falling silently. "I'm sorry for not being here. I'm sorry for letting you carry alone a pain that should never be yours. I'm sorry for failing your mum and for continuing to fail you. I'm going to do things differently from now on. I promise." Lucas didn't wake up, but his fingers instinctively closed around his father's hand, as if even in sleep he could feel that something had changed. Marcus stood up and found Anna Claire standing near the window, observing in silence. "I saw everything," he admitted softly. "Through the cameras. I installed cameras throughout the house because I thought you were manipulating my son, that something was wrong. But the problem was never you. It was always me." Anna Claire didn't seem surprised or offended. She simply said, with that characteristic calm, "Lucas doesn't need you to be perfect, Dr. Beaumont. He just needs you to be present. He needs to know that you love him, that you're trying, that you won't abandon him again. That's all." Marcus nodded, unable to speak. Anna Claire walked to the door, but before leaving she turned. "If you need help learning how to connect with him, I can teach you some things. But you have to want to. You really have to want to change. He deserves that. And you also deserve to have your son back." She left, leaving Marcus alone in the room with Lucas. He sat in the chair beside the bed and stayed there all night, just watching his son sleep, promising himself that when morning came, he would be a different man. The next morning, when Lucas woke up, the first thing he saw was his father sitting beside the bed, with deep, dark circles under his eyes, but with a different look in them. "Dad?" the boy murmured, confused. "Did you stay here all night?" Marcus nodded. "I did, son, and if you let me, I'll be here whenever you need me." Lucas looked at him for a long moment, assessing the sincerity of those words. Then, timidly, he extended his hand. Marcus held it, and for the first time in years, father and son cried together. In the days that followed that transformative night, Marcus began a journey he knew would be long, difficult, and at many moments, painful. There were no shortcuts to mending years of emotional distance. There were no magic formulas or business strategies that could be applied to the heart of a wounded child. But for the first time in a long time, Marcus was willing to truly try, to expose himself, to fail and try again, as many times as necessary. He offered a formal apology to Anna Claire on a Saturday morning, calling her for a conversation in the living room while Lucas played in the garden with Mrs. Celia. He acknowledged that he had unjustifiably invaded her privacy, that he had projected fears and insecurities onto her that were solely his, that he had doubted her intentions when she had only shown competence, care, and genuine love for the boy. Anna Claire listened in silence, her calm and understanding green eyes, and when he finished, she simply said she accepted the apologies, but made it clear with kindness but firmness that the most important thing now was not the past that could not be changed, but the future that could still be built brick by brick, gesture by gesture, day by day. Marcus began to actively participate in Lucas's life in ways that previously seemed impossible or unnecessary. He helped with homework every afternoon, not just supervising from afar with distracted glances while thinking about reports and investments, but actually sitting beside his son, picking up the pencil, explaining math exercises with a patience he didn't even know he had, celebrating every correct answer as if it were a great victory. He asked questions about his son's day during dinner, genuine questions that showed real interest, and listened to the answers with full attention, truly listened, without interrupting, without looking at his phone, without letting his mind wander to stock market numbers. He discovered that Lucas loved dinosaurs and spent hours in the library reading about them, so Marcus bought an illustrated encyclopedia, and they spent an entire afternoon leafing through it together, Lucas pointing to each species and recounting facts he had learned, his eyes shining with an enthusiasm Marcus hadn't seen in so long. He finally started therapy with a psychologist specializing in grief and family trauma, willing to face the guilt he carried like a stone tied around his neck, willing to unpack emotions he had locked away in mental drawers for years. And one day on a sunny August afternoon, Marcus made the most difficult decision. He went up to the second floor, stopped in front of the master bedroom door, and with trembling hands unlocked it. He opened it slowly. The room was exactly as Olivia had left it. He took a deep breath and entered. He sat on the bed they had shared, touched the books she loved, smelled her perfume that still lingered faintly in the air, and he finally allowed himself to remember not only the pain of loss, but all the good things they had lived. He remembered her laughter, lazy Sunday mornings, long conversations on the veranda, and for the first time he was able to think of her and smile, even with tears in his eyes. Lucas, who had watched his father go up with Anna Claire beside him, took a deep breath and asked, "Can I go up too?" Anna Claire looked at him. "Are you sure? You don't have to force yourself." Lucas shook his head. "I want to try." The three went up together. When Lucas reached the bedroom door, he stopped, trembling. Marcus extended his hand. "We can go in together if you want, or we can just stay here at the door. No rush." Lucas looked at his father's hand, then at Anna Claire, who smiled encouragingly. Then he held Marcus's hand tightly and took the first step into the room. It wasn't easy. Lucas cried. Marcus cried, but they were together, and that made all the difference. The Alden Beaumont mansion began to change. Silence ceased to be a prison and transformed into a space for rebuilding. Anna Claire remained as a caregiver and emotional bridge, but now Marcus was truly present. Lucas, little by little, found the courage to revisit memories without completely breaking down, and Marcus finally allowed himself to learn what he had avoided his entire life: how to deal with emotions, with vulnerability, with love. What had begun as suspicious surveillance and irrational fear transformed into redemption and reconnection. The recording Marcus believed would reveal something about Anna Claire had revealed the truth about himself. And there, in that once dark house, a new beginning was born, made of presence, healing, forgiveness, and finally, true love between father and son. End of story. Dear listeners, we hope the story of Marcus, Lucas, and Anna Claire has deeply touched your hearts. If you were moved by this journey of pain, redemption, and family rebuilding, please like, subscribe to the channel, and tell us in the comments which moment stood out to you the most. Was it the final revelation? Was it the hug between father and son? Or was it Anna Claire's infinite patience? Every day we bring intense stories like this, which reveal the deepest and truest side of the human soul, stories about losses, overcoming, loves, and new beginnings. We look forward to seeing you in the next episode with another story that will stir your emotions.